And let's go over to Jafrikayiti. He's in Canada, Haitian. A lot of the times we think of Canada as the more, peaceful country when compared to the West. They're not warmongers. They don't go and actually invade countries. Is that true? Is that perception true? And then how do you see the role of mainstream media, and what sort of keywords do you think we should look out for? You mentioned the phrase international community, which I myself kept using actually up until recently, and talk about why that term in and of itself is problematic.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Amela, for this question, because of course there is one of the main characteristics of the white supremacist forces is that they've invented words to camouflage the true nature of the conflict. Even the word West, the conflict is not about geography. And so a couple of the taboo words that we have in our world today include white. Everybody's stepping away from the word white supremacy. And the way the white gang operates is that they have good cops and bad cops. And the role that they've assigned to Canada within the gang is for Canada to do the things that if the US were to do it, it would be too obvious. And so one of the keywords I would invite people to Google is the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti. This is a meeting that took place where I live in Ottawa-Gatineau on January 31st, February 1st, 2003. All foreign diplomats, all white, they met over 2 days to decide the future of Haiti. They decided that Haiti must be put under UN tutelage, the government of Haiti overthrown. The tragic element of that is not that a bunch of white men and women didn't see anything wrong with them meeting and making those decisions on the eve of the bicentennial of the end of racial slavery in the Americas in Haiti. But the tragic element is that a year later, their ridiculous ideas were implemented. White soldiers entered the residence of the president, kidnapped him and his wife, and they shipped him to Africa, where he stayed in exile for over 7 years. I mean, an outrageous crime of white supremacy, very bold, but it never made it to the mainstream media because all the people that were asking questions about what had happened to Haiti were mostly either people that they had subdued or paid in Haiti or in the Haitian community in Canada, or some white NGO director in Haiti who was more than likely involved in preparation of the coup. Because one of the elements that what the so-called mainstream media will never explain to you is the racial dimension of those conflicts. So in Haiti, as you have in Venezuela, you have a tiny white minority in the country that serves as the fifth column, okay, that helps the white gang that is outside of the country. I will not use the word West, okay, because Haiti is not west of anything. We're in the same neighborhood, and it's the racial dimension. And that's because neocolonialism follows the same pattern of colonialism. You see, the 20,000 whites who were managing the slave colony in Haiti did not rely on their own power. They relied on the armies of France, Britain, the United States, and Spain. And today, we have 15 white families in Haiti that control the economy of the country, the riches of the country, and they do so by alliance with the white supremacist forces, that is, those countries that like to use the term international community. And the final point I made here is that there is an element of narcissistic tendencies that is persistent in the war that the white world has launched against Black nationhood. This is the idea of presenting everything they do as global in nature, universal in nature. And that's why they call themselves the international community. A final point I'll make, though, is that it's not the first time that they are using the United Nations to wage war on Black nations. In the 60s, when they were attacking the newly established democracy in the Congo to kidnap Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba and basically destroy his body using acid, it was the United Nations that helped capture Patrice Lumumba and murder him. Okay, and to this day, none of these criminals have paid any price for it. In fact, the Belgians who dissolved the bones of Patrice Lumumba in acid were in their 90s and doing TV interviews laughing about the whole thing. And so I think when it comes to the role that is assigned to Canada, we in Canada Haiti Action Network, in Solidarité Québec Haïti, have done all we can to try to do interviews. But as we mentioned earlier, they choose who they interview. And I have had interviews suddenly canceled on me or faded out on me whenever I mention some of the obvious facts about what has happened in Haiti. And the final point, the UN troops that they were sent to Haiti in 2004, it was in 2004, not after the earthquake. They were already there. The UN troops were sent to Haiti because the white supremacist forces knew that they were overthrowing a popular government. They were overthrowing 7,000 elected officials. And so they knew that the people were going to revolt. And so that's why they brought in the UN troops to subdue the population. And this is well documented in Kevin Pina's film, We Must Kill the Bandits. You can check that on YouTube. It's in several languages. But the UN troops brought cholera to Haiti, contaminating over 1 million Haitians and killing over 50,000. To this day, they have not paid a cent in reparations to these thousands of people who've been victims. And so what you see today underground in Haiti is a country that has 0 elected officials. In essence, they established a gang so that they can maintain white minority rule using blackface puppets. And that's what happened when you saw they killed one of their latest puppets, Jovenel Moïse. But what you will not hear in the mainstream media is the involvement of DEA agents, the agents from the US government Drug Enforcement Agency who were involved in the assassination of Jovenel Moïse, who is a puppet who started to become a liability for them because he was involved with some of the others in the 15 families that are drug running in Haiti. And they felt that in order to maintain the government, the puppet government that they've put in place, it's better to get rid of him and salvage the rest of the regime. But this analysis, you will not hear on Radio Canada, you will not hear on BBC, you will not hear on CNN, because like Margaret was explaining earlier, these topics are considered taboo and they don't fit the white supremacist narrative that sometimes they call Western narrative.
Ah, so good. I'm taking notes. Yeah, there's so many things that we really, I guess, traps rather, that we fall into by saying the West, international community, etc. And to your point, the tragic element is not just that there are wars or there's suffering and in a different regard, but that narrative is flipped on its head and the victims are made to be the culprits or the killers. And then the actual culprits, the people that are starting the wars and fueling the wars, are the heroes. And so, and we, on the Ethiopia and Horn of African issue, when it comes to mainstream media, you know, from time to time, they bring you on or they bring different people on just to hammer that same narrative. It is, you know, I've been on, you know, on shows where they read the copy leading into you. It's literally all a bunch of lies. So now the premise is a lie, and here you are having to push back against that. And I know how news works. So over time, when somebody's telling you, no, there's not famine, or no, starvation is not being used as a weapon in Ethiopia, you have to update that copy. So now you cannot go into that that interview saying the same thing you said a month ago before all of that information came out. And so I think that's a really good point. So in Haiti, you know, I've talked to Danielle about this as well, and Jafrikayiti, you're saying this as well. There's a white minority there that is actually taking up the economic space. In Ethiopia, it's pretty homogenous. So they use this minority ethnic group and a political group that claims to represent them to feed into them that you're superior, that you deserve more, you're so amazing, you're like the civilized ones, etc. And I think that's part of what makes it doubly tragic. You know, the people within are fed this propaganda that's actually pushing them to work against their own selves, their own country. They're literally helping burn their own house under the guise of protecting that ethnicity, which has long lived with the rest of Ethiopia for centuries. Hey everybody, please support independent journalism by going to patreon.com/HermelaTV and becoming a member. Thank you so much for your support.